Welcome to this explainer. I want you to imagine a vast landscape stretching out right in front of you. But the ground beneath your feet, it isn't Earth. It's made of overlapping sheets of old calendars and yellowing blueprint paper. Out in the distance, there's a futuristic skyline, half-built, with its edges just curling and fraying. We live in a time where the future has literally been folded in upon itself. Think about it. If you were to send a hit song from today back 30 years, it wouldn't sound like some wild transmission from tomorrow. It would just sound like a highly polished iteration of yesterday. We are marooned in a 21st century that just keeps replaying the 20th in high definition. Let's look at the blueprints of our reality and try to understand exactly why.
The late cultural theorist Mark Fisher diagnosed our exact condition with a heavy, melancholic observation. He called it the slow cancellation of the future. Fisher noticed that Western civilization seems to have just lost the capacity to produce a truly new aesthetic or social vision. We don't really experience those radical ruptures or the shock of the new that completely define the mid-20th century anymore. Instead, the revolutionary spirits of the past have been commodified, polished up, and constantly redistributed through the high-definition feeds we scroll through every single day.
So I want you to sit with this question for a moment. Why does today look, sound, and feel so much like the past? Why are we endlessly recycling the aesthetics, the movies, and the sounds of 40 years ago instead of forging something entirely unrecognized?
Section 1. The Folded Horizon.
The root of this whole condition is a concept called hauntology. The philosopher Jacques Derrida coined the term back in 1993, and it's actually a pretty clever pun. See, in French, the silent H makes it sound exactly like ontology, which is the philosophical study of being. But hauntology, that's the study of ghosts. And we aren't talking about the spirits of the dead here. We're talking about the ghosts of futures that were promised to us but never actually arrived. We're haunted by mid-century dreams of social equality and that grand space-age optimism that just sort of stalled out and vanished somewhere in the late 70s.
Hauntology essentially operates by pulling us apart in two opposite directions. On one side, we have the no longer. This is the refusal of past forms to just go away. It's the endless recycling of 1980s synthwave or the endless movie reboots. Think of them as ghostly, translucent layers of history that suffocate the present. But on the other side, we have the not yet. This is the anticipation of a future that never materialized. You know, the 1960s visions of families in flying cars or gleaming silver utopian cities? We're caught right in between. We live in a society where the present is never fully present to itself, simply because we're too busy looking at what used to be and mourning what never was.
Section 2. The architecture of failure.
To a lot of modern eyes, the massive concrete shells of brutalism are just eyesores, bleak, gray monoliths. But to the hauntologist, they are the bulldozed tombs of a lost promise. Between 1958 and 1978, this heavy concrete architecture was the absolute embodiment of romantic progressivism. These structures were built with the sincere belief that architecture could literally engineer a better, more egalitarian human society. Now, as you look closely and see the concrete cracking and peeling, they stand as the physical ruins of a future that failed to launch.
And this architectural mourning definitely isn't confined to the West. Over in the East, we find the ruins of what you might call Soviet Jurassic technology. We're talking about highly experimental, abandoned Soviet bus stops that look like alien spaceships, or the derelict Buran space shuttle hangars just rotting away at Baikonur. These structures act as the phantom limbs of a massive cosmic ambition. They are modern ruins where the bright, futuristic layers of the space race are quite literally peeling away to reveal nothing but rust and dust.
Section 3. The Sonic Crackle. Sonic hauntology is perhaps the most visceral symptom of our condition. Picture a gramophone playing a disc made of jagged digital code, shedding tiny bits of visual static as it spins. This is the realm of artists like The Caretaker. His musical project simulates the physical decay of memory itself. He takes beautiful 1920s and 30s ballroom music and subjects it to extreme degradation, using a conspicuous amount of vinyl crackle, hiss, and distortion. This isn't just mere nostalgia. It's an attempt to turn time itself into an audible materiality. When we use digital tools to deliberately mimic the crackle of old vinyl, we are actively mourning the loss of a tangible past. We're feeling the decay of time in our own ears because the now feels so hollow.
This sonic aesthetic runs really deep. You can see it clearly in Olga Dremda's alphabet of hauntology. Consider Ghostbox, for instance, a record label completely dedicated to the eerie sounds of post-war British popular modernism. Or take a look at PIFs, which stands for Public Information Films. These were the frightening, almost dystopian television warnings of the 1970s that served as a kind of mild trauma for the youth of that entire era. Musicians today actually sample these eerie, lurking threats to evoke a strange alternate history. It's a nostalgia for a progressivism that somehow took a dark, occult turn.
Section 4. The Great Stagnation.
The cultural melancholy we're feeling is actually anchored in a harsh material reality. Imagine a massive gear system where one gear is innovation and the other is capitalism, and they're just jammed, grinding against each other. Economist Tyler Cowen provides the bedrock for this with his Great Stagnation thesis. See, historical growth from 1880 to 1940 was fueled by low-hanging fruit, easily accessible advantages like vast land expansion, and massive, world-changing technological leaps like electrification and sanitation. But since 1973, that fruit has essentially been exhausted. Energy is expensive. Technology now mostly offers incremental digital refinements rather than breathtaking resets of how we live. Economic growth has stalled, and it masks itself behind the closed loop of the IT sector.
We can trace the exact path of this exhaustion. We went from the miraculous resets of daily life brought by internal combustion and electricity in the 1880s to the sweeping social changes of mass communication in the 1940s. And then we hit the wall. 1973. The end of easy growth, the productivity plateau. This is the exact year median wages flattened out, and the promised wealthy future we were all expecting simply evaporated from the blueprints.
Because we stopped innovating in the physical world, we retreated into the digital one. Our Umwelt, which is our biological subjective environment, has profoundly shifted. We moved from a traditional Umwelt, rooted in direct sensory input from nature and linear time, into a post-digital Umwelt. Today, our environment consists almost entirely of algorithmic feeds and affective surveillance. We live in this flattened non-time, a closed loop where our smartphones ensure we are never, ever bored. Yet somehow, everything feels profoundly boring. Culture begins to eat itself. We're fed rebranded elements of the past, keeping us perfectly stagnant.
Naturally, some thinkers wish to break this jam entirely. This brings us to accelerationism, a philosophy seeking a high-speed exit from the stagnation by pushing capitalist development to its absolute limits. And it branches in two very different directions. On the right, figures like Nick Land view capital as an inhuman technovirus, pushing toward a total dissolution of humanity and a post-human singularity. On the left, thinkers like Sternesek and Williams argue for reclaiming modernity, using technology not to destroy us, but to liberate us into a fully automated post-work future. So the theories present a stark choice: digital dissolution on one side or Promethean emancipation on the other.
Section 5. The Off-Modern Exit.
But there is another way out, not by looking back with simple nostalgia, but through a concept called cultural exaptation. In biology, exaptation is when a trait that evolved for one purpose is co-opted for an entirely new one, like dinosaurs using feathers for warmth, which eventually allowed birds to fly. Cultural exaptation asks us to do the exact same thing with the ruins of our failed futures. We must completely rethink the opposition between development and preservation. Imagine picking up the fallen, useless non-commodities of our past and piecing them together to build a strange, new, irregular patchwork shelter.
The theorist Svetlana Boym called this exact approach the off-modern perspective. It involves strategies like prospective nostalgia, which doesn't mean longing for the past itself, but longing for the unfulfilled future potential that the past contained. It's about modernization through preservation, where we build bold new ideas right inside the concrete ruins of brutalism. We don't try to fix the old blueprints. Instead, we take the glitches, the ghosts, and the vinyl crackles, and we use them as tools to finally break the capitalist realism of the present. Ultimately, the ruins of the future are not merely sites of melancholy. They are the active battlegrounds for our social imagination. If you pull back and look at the whole picture, the future is only canceled if we continue to passively wait for it to arrive. Perhaps the ghosts that haunt our culture are not actually here to frighten us. Perhaps they are here to remind us that the path we are currently walking was never the only one available. So what will you build from the scraps of these unfulfilled dreams? Let that sink in.